Beneath the frigid, desolate waters of the Baltic Sea, where few have ever dared to venture, an object of mysterious origin was discovered, resting deep on the seafloor. It was perfectly circular, almost unnaturally so, as if it had been shaped not by the forces of nature, but by the hands of a long-lost civilization. Every instrument sent to examine the object malfunctioned. Every attempt to study it was interrupted by unexplained failures. And with each setback, the mystery only deepened. So what exactly is this object? Is it a relic from a forgotten culture, erased by time? Could it be evidence of contact with something not of this earth? Or is it nothing more than a brilliantly executed hoax in an era ruled by digital illusion? In today's video, we'll descend into the depths of the Baltic Sea in search of answers to one of the strangest underwater enigmas ever recorded. So buckle up as we dive headfirst into this mystery. But first, legend says you'll have incredible luck if you like and subscribe before this video ends. It all began on a summer morning in 2011, when a team of American deep-sea explorers from Atlantic Dive Group stumbled upon an entirely unexpected find. While conducting a routine sonar sweep across the seafloor, they intercepted an anomalous signal, one that revealed a massive object, perfectly circular in shape, lying roughly 300 feet below the surface. Captain Mark Ellison and his colleague, Greg Hansen, stared at the sonar monitor. It was clear this wasn't any ordinary shipwreck, nor was it a natural geological formation. The seas were rough, and their journey had already consumed more fuel than expected. With limited time remaining, they made a bold decision to lower their ROV, a remotely operated vehicle, into the murky depths. No one knew what they would find, but they all understood one thing. If luck was on their side, they would be the first humans to ever witness what had remained hidden beneath the sea for who knows how long. The ROV began its slow descent, sinking through layers of silty, near freezing water. On the monitor in the ship's control room, the depth gauge ticked upward, 195 feet, then 210, then 230, and finally, at around 260 feet, faint shapes began to materialize in the distance. A massive, motionless structure, nearly perfectly circular, came into view. Its outline didn't resemble anything produced by nature. The edges were too precise. Grooves etched into the surface appeared intentional, as though they had been carved by intelligent hands. But then, just seconds later, when the ROV reached a depth of approximately 270 feet, the lights abruptly cut out and the video feed turned to black. The compass spun wildly, as though reacting to an intense magnetic field. The vehicle's orientation became scrambled, and its signal began to jam. The tether cable went taut, as if snagged on something unseen. No matter what the crew tried, the ROV wouldn't budge. Then suddenly, the visuals returned. The ROV had passed the 300-foot mark. In the dim glow of its onboard lights, a new formation appeared, what looked unmistakably like a stone staircase. It looked old, ancient even, but was strangely untouched. There was no rust, no algae, no marine growth. It didn't resemble a wreck. It looked more like an entrance. At that exact moment, the ship's power systems, which had been operating normally, shut down and rebooted without any input from the crew. Monitors flickered. Sonar systems blinked erratically. It felt as though the entire vessel was being interfered with by some unseen force. No one on board said a word. They simply stared in silence at the monitor. There was nothing left to say. To many, the discovery of a strange, unexplained object at the bottom of the Baltic Sea might seem shocking. But to the Atlantic Dive Group, it wasn't the first time they had encountered the inexplicable. Back in 1992, the team made headlines throughout the maritime exploration community when they located the wreckage of a World War II B-17 Flying Fortress bomber, resting silently off the coast of Maine. The aircraft had vanished decades earlier, its whereabouts completely unknown. Yet somehow, the team managed to track it down. On another mission, the same group became fascinated by a mysterious ship lost in naval records. The Everton, an American merchant schooner that was sunk by a German U-boat in November 1916. It had been carrying an expensive shipment of champagne and premium cognac intended for the Waldorf Astoria in New York City. For months, they searched tirelessly, and in 1997, they found it, sitting more than 210 feet below the surface. The result? Over 3,000 bottles of vintage champagne and 14 crates of pristine cognac, perfectly preserved in the icy darkness of the deep sea for nearly a century. The rare spirits were eventually auctioned off to collectors across the globe. But for the Atlantic Dive Group, the real value wasn't in the money earned. It was in the pursuit, the uncovering of secrets long buried by time and tide. That same spirit is what brought them back to the Baltic Sea in the summer of 2011. Not in search of treasure, not for fame or recognition, but to continue an unfinished journey, to follow a trail of mysteries that history had seemingly chosen to forget. By the summer of 2012, the Atlantic Dive Group returned to the Baltic. This time, they came better prepared, with upgraded equipment and a carefully refined plan. Their research vessel arrived early, outfitted with next-generation sonar systems and custom-built remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, engineered specifically for extreme underwater conditions. This time, they were determined to solve the mystery lying beneath the cold waters of the Baltic Sea. But within just a few hours of reaching the site, it became clear that nothing would go according to plan. Every time they attempted to lower measuring equipment or underwater cameras near the anomaly, the entire system malfunctioned. The ROVs would reach the outer perimeter of the site and then suddenly power down, as if an unseen force was interfering. Satellite communication devices lost power without warning. Control systems began to flicker or fail entirely, with no identifiable cause. Frustrated by the failure of their state-of-the-art technology, the team fell back on the oldest method in the book, sending in divers. Their most experienced team members descended into the dark depths with handheld cameras and basic lighting equipment. No sophisticated gear, just their own eyes and instincts. And what they witnessed was something no geological survey or sonar image had ever described. Across the surface of the object, they found straight grooves and clean, deliberate cuts, so sharp they appeared to have been made by human hands or something even more precise. In several areas, they discovered perfectly round drill holes, spaced at regular intervals that were disturbingly uniform. Everything about the site suggested one thing. This object could not have been formed by nature. Above the main body of the structure, a dome-like protrusion rose up, resembling a control chamber. Below, a stone staircase descended from one tier to another, too clearly laid out to be accidental. As the divers explored further, they noticed even more strange formations, rectangular blocks, vertical stone slabs, and narrow pathways that seemed to lead deeper into the seafloor. No one could say for sure what they were looking at. Was it a structure? A base? Or something that defied every boundary of human understanding? Eventually, the group was forced to turn back. Every attempt to probe deeper was met with the same inexplicable resistance. The risks were too great to continue. But before they left, they collected several small fragments, shavings taken directly from the surface of the object. At first glance, the samples seemed unremarkable, rough, grayish, dull, indistinguishable from any other rock found on the ocean floor. But once they were brought back to the lab at the University of Stockholm for analysis, the results were anything but ordinary. The material was identified as basalt, a type of igneous rock formed by volcanic activity. But that raised more questions than it answered. The region of the Baltic where the anomaly was found has no known history of volcanic activity. Not for billions of years, not since the Precambrian period, also known as the Proterozoic Eon. Geologists were baffled. How could volcanic rock exist in a region defined by frozen waters and a geologically quiet past? Had the basalt been carried there over thousands of years by underwater currents? Or had it been placed there deliberately by a civilization now lost to time? Further tests showed no traces of iron, no signs of synthetic materials, no metal of any kind, nothing that would suggest a modern origin. The object was composed entirely of stone. And yet, it had been shaped, cut, and arranged with such technical precision that it defied everything scientists thought they knew about natural geological processes. When the first images of the mysterious object began to circulate, the media quickly descended into a frenzy of speculation. It didn't take long before early theories began to emerge. The most popular, and the one that captured the public's imagination most powerfully, was the idea that the object was a UFO, a spacecraft of extraterrestrial origin that had crash-landed thousands of years ago. At first glance, the theory may sound far-fetched, but upon closer inspection, the details seem almost tailor-made for such a scenario. A perfectly circular structure, a nearly 1,000-foot-long trench carved clean through the seafloor, as if the object had skidded to a halt after an uncontrolled descent. A dome-like formation rose from the center, resembling a cockpit or control hub. And perhaps most compelling of all, the surrounding area emitted some kind of electromagnetic interference strong enough to disrupt modern electronic equipment. But not everyone was convinced that this was something from beyond the stars. Another theory, just as mysterious and perhaps even more haunting, suggested the object was a remnant of a lost civilization, possibly even Atlantis. The geometric shapes, stone staircases, buried slabs, and submerged corridors echoed architectural features found in ancient ceremonial sites across the globe. Supporters of this theory believe the object wasn't something that fell from the sky, but rather a sacred structure, maybe a ritual complex, built during a time when sea levels were lower, only to be swallowed by centuries of rising tides and geological change. Then came the war theory, a more grounded, but no less eerie possibility. According to this idea, the object didn't originate in antiquity, but during the 20th century, specifically around World War II. Nazi Germany was known to pursue highly ambitious military technologies, some so advanced they bordered on science fiction. Some researchers speculated that the object resting beneath the Baltic Sea might be the remains of such a project. If the surface grooves were actually hallways and control stations, perhaps what was found was an underwater communications base or an experimental electronic defense system designed to jam signals and sabotage enemy equipment. As waves of speculation continued to grow, a quieter but more skeptical voice began to emerge. These were the voices of geologists and rational observers, those who weren't swayed by the symmetry, who didn't see a cockpit in the dome or hallways in the grooves. To them, it was simply rock, and they asked the uncomfortable but necessary question: could this all be one massive misunderstanding? One of the simplest explanations came from geologists who proposed that the object at the bottom of the Baltic Sea might be nothing more than a natural formation, shaped over tens of thousands of years by powerful geological forces or deposited by ancient glaciers that once carved the region. These glaciers could have dragged massive stones from distant places, molding them in unexpected ways. What appeared to be deliberate design might actually be the result of ice, wind, and time. Some went even further, suggesting that the crew from Atlantic Dive Group hadn't found a natural anomaly at all, but possibly a man-made sculpture or industrial object that was lost at sea and slowly buried beneath the sediment. When modern sonar scans passed over it decades later, the low-resolution images may have exaggerated details, turning a mundane object into an extraordinary mystery. More than a decade has passed since the Atlantic Dive Group first discovered the anomaly, and in all that time, no explanation has emerged that can silence every doubt or earn universal agreement. Maybe it's just an unusually shaped rock. Maybe it's the remnant of a civilization long lost, or the forgotten creation of hands no longer remembered in history. But one thing remains certain. It is the very absence of certainty that makes it so compelling. In an age where nearly every question can be answered with a quick search, the object lying beneath the Baltic Sea remains one of the few enigmas that refuses to yield to explanation, a silence deeper than the ocean itself. If this story made you pause or sparked a theory of your own, share in the comments below. And if you're ready to explore more of the world's unsolved mysteries, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. The next journey may be even stranger than this one.